Anyone who's been in rush hour traffic is definitely looking for that. So next, we're going to look at another thing that LA is becoming known for, which is one of the first places in the nation where we have gotten 5G broadband at home. I did not know we were one of the first in the nation to have that. And so we're going to talk about how internet services, fast Wi-Fi is affecting cities, and our fireside chat is called If These Streets Could Talk. So please help me welcome Gene Holm, Lanny Ingram, and Alan Unsman for our next fireside chat.
Good morning. So I think that the flying air taxis are about 10 years too late. My commute was really terrible this morning, so that would have come in handy. Alan Onsman from Forbes. I'm a transportation mobility journalist, so we're getting into an area that's not my area of expertise, but one that I'm very personally excited about because who doesn't want faster internet speeds? But I really want to learn, and I hope we can all learn a little bit more about what's coming and maybe what it's going to mean here in Los Angeles with a couple people that know a lot about this. First of all, Lonnie Ingram, who is, VP of Smart Communications for Verizon, the company that's building this network. Lonnie, I'm wondering if you could start us off by sort of clarifying what is 5G broadband based on, say, 4G LTE, which we have today on our smartphones.
Yeah, no, thank you. Really excited to be here, so thank you for that. So we're very excited about 5G coming on board within communities and really excited about getting them live in places like Los Angeles where we can actually start seeing the true impact of the technology. So 4G obviously has allowed us to be able to have our smartphones and see the videos and do everything that we've been able to do today, watching our movies and our sports as we're walking along or really anywhere we want to be. 5G takes that to a whole different level. Think about 100 times faster speed than what you have with 4G. That's really significant. So the activities that Verizon is really focused in on right now is first to be able to take that technology and put it into the home. And then ultimately we'll start moving more into mobility services. And also simultaneously we're trying to see what other types of activities are really going to benefit from 5G. Two main things that 5G has is a very low latency and a high amount of bandwidth, which means you can take a tremendous amount of data in a super fast speed. Right? That's in essence what 5G provides to us in comparison to 4G. And so because of that, we are now looking at the types of use cases and solutions that will allow us to take advantage of that. So everything from autonomous vehicles to other video-based type solutions as AR, VR, drones, robotics starts becoming more integrated into our daily activities or solutions where we need that real-time capability with a high amount of data feeds. 5G is going to be a really great solution for us.
Okay. So that's the service side, and then it's coming here to LA, and that will require assistance from the city of Los Angeles. And joining us is Gene Holm, who is Chief Information Officer and Senior Tech Advisor to Mayor Garcetti's office. Gene, this is obviously something you're planning for, to prepare for. What is happening to sort of enable that rollout, and if you can talk a little bit about why we should care as a city that we're getting this service.
Sure, thanks so much. And we do have 5G today. So again, we've started in this wireline connected home portfolio, but we'll be moving forward with other ways of connecting. And I think it's really important for the city for a couple of reasons. One is it helped us kind of look across our own permitting processes. So the way that a 5G comes to a place is that there's a device that a company like Verizon puts into a physical place, and in this case it's on top of our streetlights in most cases. And so as we put in thousands of these devices with Verizon and with other providers over the next 3 to 5 years, it will densify our network. It'll make it so that even though 5G is coming, that connectivity is coming to parts of the city that we have never had well connected before. So if we look at it from a digital divide, or actually digital inclusion perspective, there are neighborhoods like South LA and Watts where only 58% of homes are connected to the internet. And it's a combination of digital literacy, accessibility, connectivity, and affordability. And there's other parts of our neighborhoods where 98% of the homes are connected. And this is huge. It completely eliminates the ability for those homes to connect to city services, to online education, to career opportunities. Think about if any of you remember looking for colleges to go to or working with your children to look for colleges to go to if you didn't have access to the internet. So the kinds of daily decisions we make are completely transformed by the ability to get homes connected. And 5G gives us that chance because of the number of devices that are coming to our city and the fact that we have agreements with companies like Verizon that say we agree together that we're going to have this as a shared value, and together we're going to make sure that we equitably permit across the city. So we measure that, we manage it together in a way that helps Verizon to get more customers, but from my perspective, helps all of our kids and our families and our seniors get better connectivity.
Maybe if I can just add to that just real quick, and because I think that this is the beauty about the partnership that we've developed with Los Angeles is both of us have been able to kind of get onto the same side of the table. And on the other side of the table, we were able to tackle now issues and problems that we hadn't been able to tackle as well in the past when you start looking at them individually. So things like digital inclusion or things around traffic management or other types of activities as the city is starting to prepare for their level of growth, we can start preparing for that as partners and try and understand how best this technology can enable the city to meet the goals that they're trying to be able to do for their citizens.
And it challenged us to change our processes. So 2 years ago, we were permitting maybe 2 of these kinds of devices a week, 2. And now we are up around 25 a week. And so we have been able to increase by both predicting how many of these devices would be coming in, changing city policies, changing city processes, realigning some resources, particularly to our Bureau of Street Lighting, who's been amazing in this endeavor, to really get more crews on the streets, make sure that it disrupts all of your lives as little as possible because we do end up trenching the streets. And we sync that up with our other city processes. So the next few years, we'll be repaving 26,000 lane miles of roads in the city of Los Angeles. And we're syncing that up with Verizon so that they can kind of coincide their build. So these things happen as much as possible at the same time, and your lives are disrupted as little as possible.
So a couple questions related to that. First of all, what is the time frame for what you would consider full coverage? Are we talking 2, 3, 4, 5 years, or what sort of ballpark time period? And then secondarily, how do you set this up? What does that look like? What's the infrastructure side of making this service available?
So I don't think we have a defined timeline as far as how that full coverage is going to happen yet. Right now we're just incredibly excited that LA has been one of our first cities. And we're learning a lot together on how that technology works and how we actually need to be able to make it simpler and easier for us to be able to have our consumers be able to turn on their services, et cetera. So I think that we'll be working together on what that full-blown timeline will look like. We are looking at we are first to 5G. That was very important for Verizon. We want to be first for full scale as well, coast to coast. So I think that you'll see a lot more of these very tight partnerships so that we can figure out how we actually roll that out in the way that we need to.
So let me kind of not say specific to Verizon, but anonymize it a little across all the different companies we're working with. So right now we're in the first stages of having 5G available, but I think over the next 3 years we'll pretty much see it hit every neighborhood around the city to some extent. And to be realistic, probably over the next 5 years is where we'll hit saturation, or at least like a pretty dense network. And partly that's just limited by the physical logistics. Like we have to figure out, we don't want to tear up Sunset Boulevard during peak traffic times during the year, and how do we minimize the impact? So there's some things we just logistically have to figure out. And then each of the companies has their own sort of proprietary network topology, right? Where are we going to locate these things to get the best bang for our buck, and what kind of devices are we going to put in there? And then we also will be planning a series of public meetings so that we can hear from all of the residents of Los Angeles about any questions or concerns that they have these devices are showing up on streetlights in front of their homes and their schools. They want to know more about it.
And one of the things I think is really important with this as well is we're starting to look at broader smart city architectures at the same time as we're looking at the 5G deployments, because we are climbing up the same street poles and we are digging up the same streets as we're rolling out our tens of billions of dollars worth of fiber across the country. We really do want to make sure that we're partnering with the cities to see how we can do single dig, so that it does cause less disruption to the city as we're starting to roll out these really good technologies. And also, it minimizes the impact to those street poles and other key city assets by having as minimal amount of equipment as possible to do a maximum number of things to be able to benefit the city and the types of solutions that not only do they want today, but what they want in the future.
So now let's pivot to what does this enable? So we've talked a little bit about setting it up. The previous topic, and I think the topic of every conversation today is traffic and congestion and the challenges of driving in Los Angeles or being driven in Los Angeles. So if we begin to think about what 5G, the role for 5G going forward in improving things, making the ride better, but also for traffic management and monitoring, is this going to be beneficial in that area?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be dramatic. So we all know that autonomous vehicles are currently operating on the streets of California to a certain extent, not necessarily at level 5, but certainly at levels 1 and 2. And what we want to do is make sure that we can take that all the way to full autonomy, which is going to completely change the way traffic is handled in Los Angeles and hopefully seriously mitigate it. Both on the ground and in the air. I loved the previous panel's discussions about airborne autonomous vehicles. And the only way to make that happen is by having hyperconnectivity amongst our Internet of Things and objects in the public spaces, including non-digital things like people and animals and bicycles. And so we have a current research project with Toyota Mobility Foundation around using city infrastructure and cameras that are around our intersections to be able to count the number of people and bikes and scooters so we can dynamically change traffic signaling to be able to accommodate what's happening in the public spaces. But as we have hundreds of thousands of autonomous vehicles on the ground, and I've heard upwards of 650,000 autonomous flying vehicles, because think of all the Amazon deliveries you get at your house. There's a lot of drones that are going to be doing that in the future. We want to make sure all of these things talk to each other in the fastest possible way to have the quickest possible reaction for the maximum public safety and the least disruption into people's lives. And the only way to do that is faster connectivity, and 5G is clearly the next way there.
And one of the things that, just to even get very specific on tagging on to what Jean is saying, when you think about, again, that latency and that high bandwidth, what we're really trying to be able to do is also improve the safety of those vehicles as they traverse through the city. And the connectivity both, like you said, on the ground as well as up above. So if you think of what 5G and another technology that we're doing simultaneously called MEC, which is Mobile Access Edge Compute. And it's basically the ability to us to do the compute at a local level. So now all of a sudden you take those two things together, and when we think about an autonomous vehicle driving through the street, and there may be a child or a person on the sidewalk who, now all of a sudden a ball across the street and that kid's gonna cross over, maybe it's gonna go through a couple of parked vehicles. You can detect those kinds of things by having the sensors that are on the ground that can detect, okay, there's movement, there's activity, there's a trajectory. It's gotta have an amazing amount of speed to be able to go from that sensor to the place where it's going to be computing, back to the sensors in the vehicles, have the vehicle be signaled to stop, and then actually physically have the time to stop. By leveraging 5G and MEC, some of our initial look at this, we could potentially save anywhere between 40 to 60 feet by doing that compute activity more on the edge and having that speed of that connectivity. So it's those very tangible use cases that we are now really playing with, and again, partnering with cities like Los Angeles to be able to see, okay, is that real, and how do we improve upon that?
What does this mean for a technology like DSRC, which the auto industry has been experimenting with for a time, and there are some programs in place now. The car-to-car communication. Is there potential for 5G to sort of overtake that? Is that maybe an easier way to get that same sort of vehicle-to-vehicle, vehicle-to-infrastructure communication happening?
I think that there's no one technology or one standard that's going to be the key. I believe 5G with vehicle to infrastructure as well as vehicle to vehicle communication is going to play a very huge part. And again, it's because you need that kind of speed. And as you start getting the amount of vehicles and the amount of drones and other types of objects in the air that are going to be communicating on a regular basis, on top of all of us doing our normal levels of communication, you're going to need that kind of additional communication infrastructure like 5G to be able to enable that.
Yeah, I think there's a good argument for redundancy in some of these things, especially in an area where we may suffer natural disasters. So just this last weekend with the wildfires, it seriously affected, tragically affected many neighborhoods around the Los Angeles County area and certainly in Northern California. And that takes down infrastructure as well, which inhibits our ability to communicate with people. So I was staffing social media for our emergency management department over the weekend, and just knowing that, you know, who was going to be able to get access to the information and services depended on their connectivity. Later this year, we'll be rolling out the first earthquake early warning mobile app, and this will give people 20 to 120 seconds warning that an earthquake is coming. So it doesn't predict, it just beats the ground shaking to wherever you are and lets you know. And having faster connectivity, Verizon, AT&T, a variety of partners have been helping us test that application, develop it, really help us to make sure we can get that communication with whatever kind of disaster quickly and with a redundancy. Because if you can't access one network, you might be able to access another.
And unfortunately, you know, right now we've had a tremendous amount of disasters across the country, and in California it's just been heartbreaking, and the floods over in other parts of the country as well. One of the things that Verizon's been doing is, as that connectivity might get destroyed through one of these natural incidents, we are leveraging things like even drones holding up small cells going into particular areas so that people can get that connectivity that they need. Many times when some of these disasters are happening, the cell phone is the primary way that a person can communicate that I'm here and I need help. And it's incredibly important for us to be able to ensure that we are getting out there and ensuring that communication is becoming available. And we spend a tremendous amount of time trying to do that.
So are there some new business opportunities that you anticipate are going to arise because of this availability in a very, you know, broad base in a big city like LA?
Yeah, so I'm probably the thing I'm most excited about 5G. I'm a geek and a nerd and a technologist, but the thing I'm most excited about is actually economic development. So the fact that we're going to connect neighborhoods who've never been connected, homes who've never been connected, in ways that are going to transform the learning opportunities they have. So the differences in entertainment and education are probably the first things that we'll see as 5G enables businesses to develop new capabilities around this technology that bring us into a virtual experience. And the fact that we're one of the first 5G cities means that our businesses that are already here are able to develop those, because you can only develop these technologies if you're on a 5G network. It's one of those chicken and egg things. And then we're really welcoming new companies that come here to join our 500,000 other companies in the city of Los Angeles to start up new ideas around this. And it doesn't stop at education, entertainment, or autonomous vehicles. It goes to healthcare, it goes to helping our elderly. It's a huge opportunity for economic growth, new development, and will really be one of those transformative technologies of our generation.
Yeah, one of the things I think that's really exciting about this technology as well is it creates that opportunity locally, as Jean was mentioning, because we really believe that there's nobody who knows the problems of a community better than the people who live in the community. And if there's a way for us to enable the entrepreneurs, the universities, the local companies to be able to find those solutions, and they've got the right levels of technology to help them get to that point of actually delivering those technologies, that's what we're really excited about with 5G as well.
And part of that is Verizon has launched a 5G Innovation Lab in the city of Los Angeles. And I'm telling you a secret, I'm a gamer, like a serious gamer. And so I am just like delighted the fact that it's going to be focused on immersive and virtual experiences.
So just to be clear, though, what about the handsets? Like, when do we get 5G smartphones? When do those become available?
Yeah, I think that those are definitely things that we're working on right now. I don't know if we've actually announced a launch date on it, but I think that we could expect it definitely very soon. First, we're focusing on in the home, and then the mobility handsets comes right next.
And Gene, I guess one last thing I'm curious about, which would be, the city has access to all sorts of data platforms to monitor activity as it's happening in real time. You mentioned earlier there's even, monitoring for fires that might be breaking out in the city, but watching traffic flow and things like that. What does this mean? Does this mean like my Waze information is going to be that much better now because of the 5G network? Am I going to get updates a lot faster on real-time traffic conditions?
Absolutely. So the city already does partnerships with Waze, for example. So, for example, in our high injury networks where we know left-hand turns in certain intersections tend to lead towards accidents, we work with Waze to encourage them not to route people around those areas. And then we also are looking at how we've just put out a new mobility data specification that's focused on like scooters and bikes right now, but we'll also move on up to autonomous vehicles. We've seen 10 other cities adopt that specification. It's open source on GitHub, which means that anybody can contribute to it and can use it for how we're starting to fuse all this data together, not just for our own use, but so that other companies can use not your individual data, but anonymized data, so that we can try to have all these startups understand and get access to the data that will help them make better products for all of us.
One of the solutions that Verizon has as well is traffic data services. So we've got about 1/3 of the United States with the phones in their hand, and again on an anonymized basis, that gives us a tremendous amount of accuracy of information of traffic flows in general. From this time to this time, there's a tremendous amount of movement from this area to that area, and helping cities to be able to do better planning based on very, very highly accurate amounts of data is also part of this evolution of better traffic and better mobility in cities in general.
Great. Well, I think we're probably at about time. So, Gene and Lonnie, thank you very much. I feel smarter.
Thank you.